Okay, old friends and new friends. I see some who I know and many who I don't. I want to talk about what she was also discussing, which is when our investigative stories are hiding in plain sight. And I'm just going to go to a beautiful picture of Greek seafood. Could anybody recognize any of these dishes here who can just call them out? Yes? Octopus, good one. Any others that you recognize? Shrimp, okay, yes. I don't know, this fish as well. These are all Greek meals. And I was surprised and not surprised to learn that shrimp and octopus, even in Greece, is coming from Southeast Asia. So even with all of your coastline and all of your fishing, it's not local for the most part. Let's see if this, there we go. Okay, so for years, and this continues, but for years we knew that people are being human trafficked, forced into modern day slavery on fishing boats throughout Southeast Asia, off of Africa, South America. And the way we know this is because now and then they'll come into shore and they will run from their boat, and the NGO that finds this individual will connect them with a journalist who will write their story. And after years of these types of stories, my colleagues and I became a little fed up because we knew that nothing was being done. And so we began crowdsourcing in Thailand. How many of you have ever been to Thailand from here? Show of hands. A lot, okay. Crowdsourcing there, asking people who were running off the boats, where have you been trafficked from? And enough people told us, and I love that the crowd news site that he just described. I thought that was a terrific mapping idea. But enough of them told us about a place in Indonesia called Benjina. So we called it up on Google Maps, as we do, and we could see Benjina, a little island near Ambon in Indonesia, had a lot of boats at it, had some facilities that looked like they could be processing seafood within them, and not much more. So we convinced our editors to pay $5,000 to send a little team there. A lot of money for an investigation, as you know. We went, and my colleague Robin, who speaks Bahasa, had no luck because the men on these boats actually were not from Indonesia, even though they were in Indonesia. They appeared to be from Myanmar. And there was no way to make phone calls, but we did have that old sat phone, and so she reached out to a colleague in Myanmar who spoke Burmese, Esther, and told her to come. Forget the budget, we put it on her boyfriend's credit card. I'm sure you've done this as well. So while we waited for Esther to come, we tried to document the fish because we figured we need to track the seafood from this place all the way to where it ends up. We need to know what type of fish there were. Taking photos of them, watching them being loaded onto boats, so we could say, this seafood is in this network, in this supply chain network. When Esther arrived, everything busted wide open. She was a young translator for the Associated Press, and she immediately was our hottest investigative journalist, and by that I mean she was a kick-ass, and she told these men in Burmese, this is your one shot. I'm with an American news organization, tell me your stories. And they did. They described how when they had been recruited for jobs from Myanmar to Thailand, they were locked in shipping containers. New IDs were created for them that identified them as Thai. The reason being that if you are Thai, you're allowed to be working for a Thai company in Indonesia. If you're from Burma, you're not. They took her out to a graveyard where the Thai names of men who had died at sea were above the graves. When men would die at sea fishing on all those boats that I showed you in that earlier photo, they would toss them in the ice with the fish and bring the corpses back and bury them, because at this point, these were people who were slaves who were of a particular dollar value. So they needed to bring them back. And they began counting and they stopped at 70. And then they snuck Esther inside of one of those facilities, and there was people in cages. And then the people who were in charge of this facility decided that maybe Esther wasn't just a young student or anthropologist or whatever she was appearing to be to them, and they asked her to leave. And so together with Robin, they trained somebody down at the docks to use a GoPro, and he brought it back up. And they interviewed these men very briefly, but we got snippets of film and snippets of video as they described that they had been on these fishing boats, and they had been trafficked for years. And when they came into shore to drop off their fish, they were locked in cages because there was a concern that they would run for the hills, which we would later find out many had. So now we had men who were currently enslaved. We had the fish. We had the name of the boat, the IMO number, and it left. And we tracked that boat's historic paths, routes, and current routes back into Thailand. Show of hands, how many of you play on marine traffic? Okay, so if you don't, you're welcome to pull out your phone right now if you want and Google marine traffic, because what you can see is in live, moment by moment, all the boats at sea that have their satellites turned on, and they usually have them turned on because one, they don't want to get lost, and two, it's required legally, and three, they don't want to run into other boats. So there's also similar tracking for airplanes. And when I say play with this, I know I do. When I see a large boat at sea, I have a good time taking a look at my marine traffic site. What is the name of that boat? Where did it come from? Where is it going? And then I can use my import data to even see what's on the boat, which is all of our idea of a good time and why some of our spouses want us to have other friends. When the boat came in to Samut-Sakhon, which is south of Bangkok, we staked it out. Terrible stakeout. Pickup trucks with shells on them, not enough drinking water. We were very hot and sweaty. It takes, we thought, a couple hours to unload one of these boats. Days. It takes days. So the frozen fish was uploaded into trucks, and then each time a truck would leave, we would try to follow it through the busy streets and into whatever facility it was going into, which we would photograph and video. This supply chain tracking is something we've done again and again and again. From that facility, we used customs bills of lading. Have any of you ever mailed anything to another country from your post office? None of you are sending gifts to friends abroad? Okay, some of you. You have to fill out that piece of paper and you write T-shirts or books or whatever you're sending. All of those are digitized in real time and sold and bought. And there are some of these services that are using those that will provide those services to journalists. Import Genius is one. They just gave me access, and corner me here if you're interested in seeing, to like about 15 countries, including Russia and Ukraine. So you can see what's going in and what's going out in shipping containers. So once we had the idea of it has left this place and it has come to the United States to a seafood distributor, I thought we were done. But it ends up seafood distributors are murky. Also, these interpreters have a lot of fishing and seafood work to do today. I just wanted to note because of the shark one as well. So in the United States, I found myself at a seafood expo, which is a little bit like Comic-Con, but fish. I have gone back to Seafood Expo now 3 or 4 times. They don't like me there at all, but they keep letting me come. And at this Seafood Expo, then at each of these large importers, we were able to approach them and say, hello, I'm working on this. I brought dossiers, like a little printout in a folder with, here's the man in the cage, here's the ship tracking, here's the custom bill of lading. Oh, that's your company's name on it. Let's talk. They were not friendly. In fact, our photographer and videographer asked me to sit in the press room after they distributed my photo through the whole expo and said that I was doing this investigative report. At the Thai booth, they already knew they had a problem because they were presenting their good labor practices implementation program. And when we interviewed him, he said, we're not doing this anymore. We don't have this problem anymore. And of course, I had a dossier for him. And he said, well, we're going to stop this. But they didn't. These were the brands and companies we tracked to after that conference, at which point we were ready to go to our editors and say, we have seafood from slaves being sold at Walmart. Cisco is actually a massive United States distributor as well that is serving all the seafood or all meals to prisons, hospitals, the military, restaurants, etc. So we created this for our attorneys with a boat. Every investigation I do has to include some sticky notes. And so this was our sticky note setup to explain how we had done this. And then because you're journalists, we fought over the lead, and I wanted to share that with you. This was not our lead in the end, but slavery taints global supply of seafood. Taint made it sound like maybe it would make you sick, so we couldn't use that word. Benjina, Indonesia. The Burmese slaves sat on the floor, and you saw in the photo they were standing, and stared through the rusty bars. We even had rusty metal bars, redundant, right? Of their locked cage. Obviously it was locked or they would leave, right? Hidden on a tiny tropical island thousands of miles from home. I'm just showing you this to say we rewrote the lead 28 times, at least. I think at least 28 times. And thousands of miles from home was because we knew that our readers would never know that Burma and Indonesia are two different countries and they're very far apart. Just a few yards away, other workers loaded cargo ships with slave-caught seafood. If there's a copy editor, you know there's missing a hyphen there. That crowds, that was the wrong word also. Clouds, not the right word. Taints, we fought over it. The supply networks. Thank you, attorneys, for the word supply networks of major supermarkets, restaurants, and even pet stores in the United States. The story went out, and it had an impact like I couldn't believe. I was at a dinner party for my husband's birthday, and it was on the ticker above the bar. So you know when you're working as a journalist and you're trying to be very present with your family and the story is happening and you're like, oh, I'm very excited to be here with the family, but geez, I'm reading that. That's our story. Yeah, and within days, Indonesia sent their Navy and their Marine police to Benjina. Robin went along, and a photographer, and when they got there, they began taking people's stories. And Robin, my colleague, said, you know, every one of these guys who's telling you what happened to them, that they've been on these boats, that they've been enslaved, they go back on those boats, are gonna get killed. And they said, no, we'll take them with us. We're gonna rescue them today. And she said, you are? You're gonna rescue them? And I was writing through this story via text from her for hours and hours, kept rewriting it. Okay, now they're gonna rescue them. They went out with bullhorns and they spoke in Laotian, Cambodian, Vietnamese, Thai, Bahasa, and of course Burmese. Not Bangladesh, not from India, at this site. But they went out and announced it, and people began running out of the hills. They began running out of buildings. They began coming from hiding places where they had escaped from their boats. And when it was explained to them what was happening to them, there was a lightening of the whole scene, and they asked people to raise their hands if they want to be rescued. And I rewrote the story. 100 people are being rescued today on an island in Indonesia. 300 people are being rescued today on an island in Indonesia. Let's turn that to the passive. Rescuers are saving 800 people today on an island in Indonesia. The numbers kept growing, and they actually had to commandeer the boats on which they had been enslaved in order to rescue them. They had to steal or take back the oil and gas in order to move these men to new islands where they were then put in a hurricane rescue center. By the end of that day, 2,000 men were rescued. And thank you. We have all of 1 minute for questions. So, if you have questions, please ask, and otherwise I can go on because I can talk about seafood and slaves for days. Yes?
Just a very quick question. Could you talk a little bit more about how this Esther originally got access by pretending to be a student or a researcher?
Yeah, Esther was 25, and we didn't pretend in that you're not allowed, we at AP were not allowed to pretend to be someone we weren't. But we also are not required to put on a shirt that says, I'm an AP journalist right here. So it was more like we were letting people assume what they wanted to about her. And Esther and Robin were kicked off the island, but they had more work to do. And so they hired a boat, and they went out behind a boat, actually. And then the company sent a speedboat, which they feared would try to ram them. They described, you know, when you're on a boat and you're pulling the string to get the engine started, they described some harrowing moments with that. And so then at that point, they did leave. But yes, our standards don't allow us to pretend to be someone else, but they don't demand that we outwardly identify ourselves in every situation. I'm at 0 minutes. I'm going to be here, and like I say, I have a lot of access to import data right now on my computer because they're giving me access, and I'm happy to chat with all of you. Thank you.